you guys, when I say you guys, I mean you, Chris Frazier, James Coleman, have dissected this for weeks and weeks and weeks, for hours on end. I made the comment the last time we got together that I would go through each position group, each position, each player, and then evaluate, okay, how much can they help us go forward versus their uh, time left in the program versus who's behind them that could possibly need a look, and go through that starting at quarterback and through every position. So, has there been any rumblings beyond what just people are talking about, fans and media, anything that gives any indication that there have been any changes in playing time or any changes on the depth chart?
Yeah, very minute changes. There hasn't been anything shocking. DJU, from all reports, has been the best quarterback at practice, like he has been. There's been a few things. I'm trying to think of any specific things that changed this week on the depth chart, but really just a drop, an or dropped here, an or drop there. For example, Jeremiah Byers, they dropped the or off of him at right tackle, but then he was out last week. He was injured. He remains the starting right tackle on the latest depth chart. So I don't know if he's back healthy or what the deal is there. I don't know if maybe one of the reports came from practice today. But yeah, no, mainly the same starters everywhere. Juice, the freshman linebacker, and the redshirt freshman, I guess, linebacker, Blake. Uh, they both have passed up Omar Graham Jr. on the depth chart. So that's been the biggest kind of change, I guess, of the season. But for the most part, everybody's it's not like the backups have came in and set it on fire either. But you start to really want to look at the youth movement going forward. Like quarterback, obviously, is a big one. Hakeem Williams has been injured, so there's a bright spot. If you want to put a smile on Mike Norvell, fully expects him to play against Memphis, so you're finally going to get to see him out there. And when you look at that X wide receiver spot, you've got Kentron Portier, Malik Benson, and now Hakeem Williams. I don't. It doesn't make sense to me to have your top three wide receivers, in my opinion, all on one side. I'm guessing they'll bring Hakeem over to the Z at some point, but on the other side they've got I believe Wayne McCoy, Deuce Spann, and somebody else. It's just like it's crazy how like one side has it. So I really want to see Hakeem Williams and Kentron Portier on the field as much as possible. I love Malik Benson as well. But that's another reason you want to possibly get Brock Glenn in there, because I just don't see how DJU is ever really going to hook up with Malik Benson. Like, even if DJU gets it going, just from what I've seen the first two games and kind of his playing style, um, it's going to be hard for him to make the kind of throws that Malik Benson needs to make, the NFL throws he needs to make, kind of with his skill set. So here comes big game James Coleman. Very interested to hear his opinions and all this stuff. But yeah, try to find bright spots, and the youngin at linebacker Blake Nicholson has been a super bright spot, and also Juice. What's up, James?
What's going on, guys?
Not too much. Good to see you. This is James Coleman, everyone. Den Media Group. We will have the banners up and the information there in the chat where to find James, and we will, of course, track his work. So, again, keep your eyes open there in the chat. Comments, questions are welcome. All right, James. You've been in situations, not too many, because you won most of your games at Florida State. If we go back to 2002 through 2005, it was a pretty good run for the Seminoles while you were there. So not too many of these kind of situations, and I'd have to go back and look at year by year. So I'm going to ask you, without me looking back year to year, when is the time that you felt, not just for yourself, but for the rest of the locker room, that there was the most frustration, or the most just the vibe was not what it needed to be to run with your hair on fire and hit people on Saturday?
I'd say my freshman and my senior year were 2 years where we had to figure it out. We didn't lose early like this team is losing, but we did lose some games, and we had a lot of expectations. I mean, if anybody remembers, ESPN used to do this thing called The Season. And we were tasked in '02. I've actually got a couple clips of me as a freshman. It looks weird, like seeing something over 20 years ago, but it was the year after 9/11. We had "Let's Roll" was our slogan for the year. And if anybody who doesn't know, obviously today's 9/11. Yeah, so it's crazy. The plane that flew into the Pentagon, those guys, or no, I think it got grounded. Excuse me, somebody shot it down, more than likely. But those guys weren't going to just lay down. They picked up the phone, and the guy called his wife and said the last words that he wanted to do. He called her on from the airplane phone, and the last thing that she heard was, "Okay," like to the guys who decided that they were going to fight, "Let's roll." And that was our slogan. We had that on all kinds of shirts. We came in, and the ESPN told us that if we went to the national championship, it would be a 2-hour special. Bowl game be a 1-hour special. Well, that year, we lost to Notre Dame. We lost to I think we lost to North Carolina State on the road, tough game. We lost 4 games if I remember correctly. 5 with the bowl game. We lost to Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, but that was also the year that Chris Ricks got benched. Then Adrian McPherson had the gambling, and then Chris came back. We beat Florida, but then Chris oversleeps for an exam and he's suspended for the bowl game. So a lot of internal turmoil mixed with us not playing to our ability, mixed with expectations, which, a lot of fans, they talked bad about us too. We just didn't have social media to where fans were they were more distance and all of that stuff. But it was crazy though. And I remember even the seniors going to Coach Bowden to say, "Hey, we had a quarterback controversy." So it was crazy. My sophomore, junior year, we played a lot better. We were a couple field goals, a couple close games away from playing in the Natty. And then my senior year, we had Wyatt Sexton believe he was Jesus in the middle of the street. And so we started off again with turmoil, and there was a stretch there where we didn't know what was going to go down. And eventually good teams, or I don't even want to say good teams, you are what your record says, but talented teams do typically find themselves. And you kind of can flip it around. And that's when you have to have the seniors, the guys got to talk. We had team meetings. We had all kinds of things. And we got away from it. I don't know what happened my freshman year. I was a youngin'. My senior year, I liken it to we had so many guys with NFL grades that we lost sight of what got us those NFL grades. And we started playing for ourselves as opposed to each other. And playing for each other is what got us to that point. And I think when you watch the games, from a defensive standpoint, they're just not they're playing selfish defense. They're not calling banjo, which is your switch off in man coverage. They're not they're not spilling. Guys are trying to make tackles when their job should be to spill the lineman that's pulling, so that the next guy can come and do it. You see guys playing timid, and there's just no way you can play the game like that. That's defensively. Offensively, I could not diagnose what's going on with DJU. I mean, I've heard people say it, and we didn't need DJU to be Jordan Travis, or even what Cam Ward is to Miami, which is kudos to him. We needed DJU to be a competent quarterback and give us that 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, which he has not done. And it's not just him. The offensive line, like Darius Washington last game, had one of the worst games that I've ever seen them play. In fact, I would argue two of the calls that DJU looked the worst. Well, it looked bad because one was a turnover and one wasn't a touchdown that should have been a touchdown. If you go back and you look at what happened to the left tackle, you'll get a little bit more insight on that. In fact, the interception, DJU got hit. He doesn't get hit. That's probably 6 by 6 to Jaylen Brown. He basically had one-on-one. The Boston College defender was beat. He was either going to get a pass interference call or he was going to get a touchdown. And I think there were some other times where it was just misreads and bad football. But those guys obviously know how to play. They just got to go reach inside of them. And that's the frustrating part if I'm Mike. And, I've talked to Coach. He happened to be in Jacksonville on Friday. And the frustrating part is all you can do is die. All you can do is call the play and hope for the best. And right now, it ain't even no hope. Like they just don't look like not just a very well coached football team. They don't look like a team that wants to play for each other. And there's a lot of things that people can go into. They can say it's the new NIL. They can say it's the transfer portal. But the only reason I don't subscribe to that is because there are teams that they've been successful in it before. And there are other teams that have higher NILs and more transfer portal guys, and they're having the success. So to quote Nick Saban, you got to pay the right guys. And right now, it just doesn't look like the guys that we're paying are panning out. And you miss, but I guess in today's landscape, when you miss, it looks really, really bad.
Let me throw a metaphor and a question out there for you, because obviously I didn't get to play at Florida State like you did. Super awesome that you got to join us this week. Like, I was a short order cook for a little bit of time, ended up becoming the manager, like all the way from the dishwasher at like a little 3-star Italian restaurant. Like, there would be nights when I'd go in the kitchen and it would be hell to break. Nothing's coming out right. The tickets are 300 miles, and I could just, everybody back up, let me run this thing, and start calling out orders for people. And the same 6 people will get into a routine all of a sudden, like the dishwasher's throwing clean dishes to the microwave guy, yada, yada. Is it that simple at all? Like, my question is, when you see our defensive line getting blown back 2 and 3 yards, and then you watch, those teams play D2 or lesser teams, whatever, the next week, and it's the opposite. They're getting whipped up front. It's like, I know I've seen it in recent years when these guys came in as second string and third string guys. They're better than that. Like, is it that simple? Do we just need a middle linebacker that can call everything out? Like, is Maurice Smith not binding with the new right guard? Are there issues that, like, is there that kind of solution on the end of the hill? Can folks look forward to that? Or like, what point is it that you go from youth movement and just, you really have to second guess stuff and start talking about, firing coaches before you get to the end of the year and things of that nature?
Well, they're already talking about firing coaches. Right, so
before you get there, that's what I'm saying. I don't have the same connections and things, but like, you best bet it's some changes coming after this year.
Yeah, changes are going to come. They have to, and you have to, even if Florida State makes a run, right, an improbable run, the reality is there's a disconnect, and they're going to have to do some things, not necessarily for X's and O's, but clearly there's a disconnect in recruiting, and they've got to do something different when it comes to that. I can't tell you. I don't have any inside information to tell you. I'm just using common sense and deductive reasoning when it comes to that. But but sometimes things go wrong. Baseball, they call it the yips.
Yeah.
And golf as well. It's just with guys who, because again, some of this stuff doesn't take being elite talent to be able to do. It takes knowing how to throw the football forward. It takes, like, again, to complete a forward pass isn't that hard. Now, if guys aren't getting open, that's a different thing. But like, a simple corner route should be easy to hit in the end zone. Even with that being said, by my thoughts. But like, I also blame the wide receiver on that as well. I mean, wide receivers aren't getting open. They aren't making catches. They aren't doing a lot of these different things. And I always tell people, I play for Jeff Bowden, arguably one of the worst offensive coordinators of Florida State. And we put up numbers. And this is what I tell the players when I put the onus on them. When they're like, the plays aren't right. I did this with Tag. I did this under Jimbo. I did this when they were going 3-6 or 5-7. Every offensive play is designed to score, and every defensive play is designed to stop the offense from scoring. It's all about the will and the want-to, and you have to be able to do that. But I think this is the last week that Mike can truly afford to not really make real drastic changes. And really, even in that, he's got to be like, and I hate to say this because I know how hard it is to be in that position, but DJU's got to be on a short rope if he's going to in fact be the starter. If you get in and you have the drive like he had the first drive against Boston College, and I was there when people booed him, which was crazy. Even going back, I haven't been on your show in a while, Mark, but like 14 minutes and 12 seconds to Florida State's, I believe it was 48 seconds. is how long we had the ball in the first quarter, and Boston College didn't score. So like you can't have that kind of a disparity and keep that guy in there. You look for a spark. Personally, I would have liked to have seen Brock go in or Luke go in at least before halftime to see if we could get a spark from the team. But all that being said, the game was still well within control, even with 6 minutes left in the fourth. I'm not within control, excuse me, within a range where you can win. You can win ugly, but you can win during that time. But sometimes when it rains, it pours, and you just get into this situation where you don't believe that you can do anything right. Like just look at Murlock. It's very difficult to have 5 drops. To quote my coach, if anything over 2 drops is the quarterback's fault for throwing him the ball. So like we got to get him out of there. But 5 drops in situations is not optimal. I would not continue to give him the ball, but guys got to find ways. I'm glad Mike talked about him in the practice and saying he kind of had a great day catching the ball. But that switch off communicate. It's simple communication on defense. That's really the downside to the defense. There is no communication, which is sad.
So, James, last week when we had the conversation, and I believe you were here for most of it, but at one point it was George and I going back and forth on what could possibly be done. My only remedy to this, from a talent evaluation and effort evaluation standpoint, and who's working well together and all of that, would be if I'm Mark Norvell, I'm sitting down with each position coach and going through each player in the unit. Offensive line coach, bam, we're sitting down, we're looking at every offensive lineman, we're looking at game film, we're looking at everything and saying, okay, offensive line being the most complicated example I'm going to give because you can mix and match and move people around to different places, but saying, okay, what's his performance right now compared to the standard? What options do we have? How much time does he have left in this program? Is this his last season, or is he a redshirt sophomore? So that's going to change my thinking. And then what do we have behind him? What options do we have? And how well is that particular player playing, or those players in the opportunities that they've had? And does it make sense to make a calculated risk to give somebody else a chance?
I mean, all of those things you said are I honestly got true. I think the bye week might have came too early, for my liking, but just in time. But that's really what you would coming off of 2 losses. That's what I'm saying in the bye week. I'm evaluating everything: effort, energy, youth, all of these different things. I'm evaluating, and I'm just saying, like, if you're not getting it done, I got to go with you. There's a saying in coaching, right? If you have 2 players that are even, go with the younger. So if you think Brock, or like if you don't think, I'll use a video game sample. Like, so if DJ used 83 on a video game, right, and Brock's 80, but his throw power and his accuracy are stronger, but some of the other intangibles are better. Why would I go? I'm gonna go with the young guy that's going to be able to put the ball in the position in which I needed to be put, and go from there.
Although the old school tendency, of course, is to play the guy with experience and to play the guy with tenure. And I respect that to a certain extent, with some coaches having loyalty to their upperclassmen. So if it's even, they'll typically go with the upperclassmen. That's kind of the old school way to do it, George.
Yeah, I mean, and kind of until you're 0-2, and I think Mike Norvell has a lot of that. But yeah, at this point, you really have to look at that, and to kind of what James was saying, I agree with him. And you kind of can talk about solutions and different things you have to do. I totally agree with him about Blake. Excuse me, not Blake.
Brock.
Brock. Excuse me, Brock. Because like, if people act like me saying that I want them to let Brock have a shot to start at Memphis means DJ, you can never play again. Like, he has to pack his football up and go home. That isn't what it means. Like, no, like maybe it sparks the team. Maybe it's an absolute disaster and the first team offense is like saying, "Coach, please give DJU another shot. I think we can get this shit together." Maybe that's what needs to happen. Like that's kind of where I look at it. Personally, looking at the little bit I've seen of Luke, I don't think he's ready to go out there. But if he goes out there and the one play he's really comfortable with is a deep shot and you get it and you get a touchdown, or he just pulls it down or makes a quarterback run and that gives you a spark, I'm for whatever's whatever. But yeah, at some point in time, you have to look, okay, well, this list of guys here, these single year transfers that hasn't worked out, or 0-2, 0-3, whatever the case may be, when you get to that, it's like, do we play them or the true freshmen or from our best class we've had since we've been here, or the sophomore from the second best class? And that's where I'm at. I definitely want to see those guys. They don't. I'll tell you what. Florida State's media doesn't help them with the media they put out and like the practice clips and stuff. I texted James asking about this one play where they've got Hakeem Williams out there, or not Hakeem Williams, Darius Thomas out there basically as a dummy. So he's pretending like he's playing press man, but he's not doing anything. He's just being passive and letting them drive him down the field. And James is like, this goes on. It's not that, probably shouldn't put it on the internet, but it's not that big of a deal. But when you see that, and I see those clips going up daily, you see their little, where they go around the corner and they do their solo tackling drills and it doesn't go to the ground. It's a certain kind of, thud, wrap up and stuff. That's exactly what it looks like on the field. AZ Thomas getting driven down the field and not wrapping up. And like, so whether they just need to stop putting them videos up, yada, yada, it's just, it makes a bunch of negativity. I just give you a chance to dispel some of that or explain what I'm seeing. And I know I'm not the only one out there that sees that, who didn't play the DL1 level. And it's just like, those aren't the clips that it looks like the Georgia puts up, but they're hitting a fire hose with that on their punt team. I don't know what that was about, that NFL team. They had a fire hose out there. But anyway,
the Ravens fumble drill. But it's just a lot of things. Again, thank you, son. To quote one of my friends, when you're losing, the hot dogs are extra cold. Everything is a problem. Like when you're losing, it's simple back shoulder throw drills are now. Why are we practicing back shoulder throws when we can't throw forward? And I'm like, guys, it's 24 periods, 24 times 5 gets you about 2.5 hours. You practice different things. Like it doesn't always, like you practice catching stuff that you're going to do in the game. But I 100% understand. Florida State's problem isn't even just execution, which that is a big problem of it. It's a physicality thing. I can't drill physicality. Physicality is a mindset. And I can't go. I tell my sons all the time when we play, like, Dad was a good player. Like, I don't know if you are. You got to go out there and play. I can't take on those people for you. Like, again, with Darius Washington has never shown us anything like what he showed us against Boston College. And he's played against some really good D linemen in the last 3 years. If you would have told me he was going to get his ass whooped like that, I would have been like, you're crazy. But it happened. And, maybe that just wasn't his night. We put in Lucas, we put in a couple other guys, and they didn't fare as well either. They just were, it was, those guys were on one. And that's unfortunately something that you never want to be able to say as a coach or a player. And I think we need to have, they needed to have some heart to hearts, but again, that's not coaching as much as it is a mentality. And I also think it's something that it's hard, and I think we all discount it, and we still won't know until after next week because he doesn't come back until we play Cal. But everybody talked about Mike Norvell's offense and gave Alex Atkins no credit for when the offense was clicking last year. And is it Alex Atkins? I don't know. But I do know I know when your O-line coach is there, he can possibly make adjustments. He can talk to you a little bit more about what you're doing, maybe get you some technique, some things that you need to fix. But again, at the end of the day, the only thing that I saw was a lack of fortitude in the trenches. And that was more glaring to me than even the quarterback play. I mean, even I saw one play, Maurice Smith. Like, actually, if you go back, I do a breakdown of the games, and I made this joke, and it was a pun intended. And you'll get this, Mark. A lot of people get this if you watch games. I said Black Lives Matter. And the reason why I said Black Lives Matter is if you look at the line of scrimmage on a college football or NFL game, there is a black line. The line of scrimmage, if I kid you not, Georgia Tech's offensive line consistently reestablished the line of scrimmage 1 to 2 yards down the field. That you could do a lot with that. Our line did not reestablish the line of scrimmage. In fact, a lot of times they got pushed back. And that's where the game is played. It's played in the trenches. And, you know, people can talk about our recruiting, high school recruiting, even like guys like a Solomon Thomas, who I like. You bring him in, he's not going to be ready next year. Like, you got to be big. You can put a freshman every now and then in a situation, but you can't start 5. You can't start a bunch of 1-year guys. It still never works for you. But we've got to find the 5 guys that don't just look the part, that are tough. They go out there and impose their will and dominate. It's simple. We got dominated in the trenches, and what really stinks is that it wasn't just one person. I think the only guy who I saw play really well consistently would be Richie Leonard. TJ Ferguson didn't play that bad from the times that I noticed them, but like for the most part, guys picked a play where they got destroyed, and that messes up an offense too.